Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. And let's just jump in. So my name is Matt Harrison. I'm a business intelligence and analytics consultant here at Thorogood. All right, so before we get to our agenda, I wanted to talk a bit about our objectives today. So on this webcast, we're going to discuss some of the fundamental tenets of business intelligence governance. We're going to introduce our approach to BI governance and how we work with organizations to implement that approach. And then we're going to highlight how Tableau fits into an overall governance approach and specifically highlight some of the features that Tableau offers that will help, potentially help with your governance strategy. And so just in terms of our agenda, how those objectives will fit in, I'm going to do a brief introduction to Thorogood, and then we'll briefly introduce Tableau, as I'm conscious that perhaps not everyone on the call will be familiar with the tool. And then we're going to do a deep dive on our governance strategy, and that'll include a bit of a demo. So a bit about Thorogood. For those of you guys who don't know us, we're an independent global professional services firm specializing in business intelligence and analytics. And we've been in this space for now 30 years. We're a global company, and we have offices in New York, Philadelphia, London, Bangalore, India, Singapore, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. And all of our consultants are recruited and trained in the same way. And we really put a focus on analytical ability, technology skills, and business focus so that we're able to produce unique solutions for our customers. And then in terms of the services we offer the full range of BI and analytics services, and that includes strategy, roadmaps, requirements design, implementation, training, and support. And then in terms of our clients, they typically span 4 data-rich verticals. That includes consumer goods, pharmaceutical and health services, banking and insurance. And our clients are some of the leading organizations in these sectors, and we have a lot of pride in the long-standing relationships we have with a number of these clients that you see here. And then in terms of the technologies that we work with, so of course today we're going to be talking a bit more about Tableau, but we are independent, so we don't work with any one specific technology. Rather, we do work across a number of technologies that fit our customer needs. And so, like I said, we will be talking about Tableau a bit more specifically today, but if you guys are interested in governance strategy around any of these technologies, we can certainly help, and don't hesitate to reach out. And so then a bit more about our Tableau partnership. So our Tableau practice of partnership was initiated back in 2012. And then since then, we've been a member of Tableau's Partner Advocacy Board. We've been a Strategic Alliance Partner, and then we were named Partner of the Year for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, which is where we're headquartered in the UK, back in 2014. We have over 85 consultants with Tableau development delivery experience, and that includes integration with technology such as Salesforce, Teradata, AWS, Microsoft, R, and a number of the other ones that you see here. And that's really where we tend to focus, is really how Tableau fits within the overall ecosystem, because nowadays it's unlikely that that a company will have just one tool. So understanding how Tableau can fit within your overall technology ecosystem and how you can get the most out of the technology through things like governance is very critical. And so now I'm going to briefly introduce the products within the Tableau suite. This is either going to be a crash course for those of you guys who are new to Tableau, or just a quick refresher for those of you guys who are familiar. So I've started here just with Tableau's tagline, to help people see and understand their data, and this is pervasive throughout their full technology stack. And so to start, I'm going to talk about Tableau Desktop, and that's really where Tableau development starts. This program will sit on your computer, and it will allow you to connect to and visualize data. From there, you can, once you've created your workbooks or your dashboards, you might want to distribute those to other individuals. You could do that through Tableau Desktop, although most people will do it through Tableau Server. And this is a web-based platform viewable within your browser, like Internet Explorer or Chrome. Multiple workbooks can be published within this platform and shared with hundreds or thousands of users to enable collaboration. Additionally, from an enterprise governance perspective, you can have IT-supported data sources published to your server, allowing users to leverage their own data sources for their own analysis or leveraged approved data sources, and we'll talk a bit more about that actually during the demo that we have today. There is also Tableau Online. Tableau Online is, in many ways, similar or if not the same as Tableau Server from a user interface perspective. You're still allowing users to access published reports or data. The only difference is that between Tableau Server and Tableau Online is that the underlying infrastructure setup and the service model. So Tableau Online is hosted and maintained by Tableau as software as a service. This is available from us as a subscription, whereas Tableau Server, while also available as a subscription, is under your control, installed on your own infrastructure or installed on infrastructure that you control. Lastly, there are a couple other products that I'll list at the bottom here, Tableau Public and Tableau Reader. We're going to focus on the top three today, although if you have questions about Tableau Public or Tableau Reader, if you're in a large organization, you might not be using, you likely won't be using Tableau Public as it is the public version of Tableau Online or Tableau Server, and Tableau Reader you might be seeing in pockets, although if you are seeing it more widespread, it might be worth diving a bit deeper into how you might explore getting onto something like Tableau Server. All right, so now that we've introduced Tableau very briefly, we'll get into the meat of today's presentation, starting with discussing our fundamental tenets of governance. So in working with a number of different customers around their governance strategies, we've honed in on 4 critical considerations that really underpin every successful BI strategy that we've worked on. We'll go through each of these considerations, and we've boiled them down into 2 P's and 2 B's. So the first one, our first P, is that your strategy must be practical, meaning strategy and standards must be rooted in actual use cases. And this is, I've listed this first because this is really a common pitfall of governance strategies. It's where people will develop their strategies in a vacuum and never really consider real-life applications of the strategy. So by ensuring strategy and standards are rooted in practical applications and standards, they'll be more easily adopted, and frankly, you won't waste time thinking about things in theory that will really never actually happen. The second one is that your strategy must be prioritized. And so there are, of course, many different topics that can be covered in a governance strategy, and we'll list a number of them on, I think, the next slide here. And so in this case, therefore, it's vital that your strategy is prioritized. So proper focus is given to areas that are deemed most important in the organization. So for example, it makes no sense to focus a lot of effort on a mobile strategy and how you're going to govern that if that's not part of your organization's priorities, if people don't have mobilely enabled devices. And then third, our first B, your strategy must be balanced. And so this tenet really works hand in hand with prioritized. It's important that the priorities are balanced to address all areas of need, including people using the platform, the data sources that are collected in the system, the tools at your disposal, Tableau and others potentially, and the process that pulls everything together. If you put too much focus on one of those things, for example, user enablement around the people as part of your governance strategy, then you might not put enough focus on the tools that are used to help those people get to the answers that they're looking for. And then lastly, perhaps the most controversial one is that your strategy must be bespoke or unique to your business. And I think this is really the most important one, and it's often overlooked. So as you guys will probably know, each organization is unique. So it's critical that people do not see governance as one-size-fits-all. There are certainly things that people can take from other strategies, but expecting to take something off the shelf and then just implement the strategy and have it work without tailoring it to your organization won't be successful. It has to be custom to your organization. So these are our 4 tenets, and with these 4 tenets in mind, we're going to talk about some 4 general focus areas of governance and some of the governance topics that fall into these areas, kind of what I mentioned in that prioritized section. So as I mentioned, there are kind of 4 areas of governance activity that typically play into the overall strategy. So each of these areas will require different levels of focus depending on where you are in your governance journey. And I'll talk a bit more on that in a bit. So for now, let's step through each of these areas and highlight some of the key activity or topics we'll typically see in each category. So first, we have strategy definition. And this is likely what most everyone is going to first associate with governance. So there are a number of topics to consider in your standards, such as security standards, mobiles, software development lifecycle standards, and best practices. These standards can take many forms, but it's most important that these standards are prioritized, balanced, and practical so that they are easily applied to real-life scenarios. While standards definitions will likely take the front seat when you're getting started, the overall success of the strategy is just as much contingent on the strategy's ongoing execution, which is our next section. In this area, we focus on the execution of standards. So the key to this area is the sharing of standards and that two-way feedback loop. You can't just push standards on people without understanding where they're working and where they're not working and where they need to evolve. So we'll discuss more on this when we share our approach on establishing a governance strategy. And then that'll become clear as to how we get the feedback from the ongoing execution back to the standards definition. Next, we have administration and support. So this is similar to ongoing execution. This focuses on how to enable users and admins to effectively execute and grow within the governance framework. Activities relevant to this area focus on training, coaching, and monitoring. And so this isn't only for users. This is for administrators, people, data owners or data stewards, people who are owning different applications. It's really across the board to ensure that everyone's growing within the governance strategy or framework that you have in place. And then lastly, we have exploratory and future. And so, as I mentioned with ongoing execution, your governance strategy will continue to evolve as the BI industry changes and evolves, or as your organization changes. It's important to give balance and focus to looking ahead as well. So company initiatives will change, tools will change, product capability will continue to adapt and enhance or increase. All of this will require anticipation and adaptation as your governance strategy continues to grow. And so with these 4 general focus areas and topics, we can consider across a number of BI tools and landscapes. Because today we're talking about Tableau, I've called out a couple in which Tableau offers some unique features, either in their desktop or server tool. There are more than just what I've highlighted here, but we are going to just call out these few today. So the areas that we have here are mobile, under standards definition, disseminating standards and best practice, monitoring adoption, performance, and data under administration and support. So in a moment, I'm going to jump into a brief demo that's going to highlight some of these features that Tableau offers to help in these areas. Before I do, though, it's important to note that while it's an extremely powerful tool, Tableau, like any other BI tool, won't on its own create or execute your governance strategy. So it's critical here that you don't fully rely on tools within your BI landscape to shape your governance strategy. Rather, it's important that you draw from a proper balance of tools, data, people, process, within your organization to shape your strategy and then to use your BI tools to execute on that strategy. So with that, I'm going to jump into the demo, and then we're going to start here with Tableau Desktop, and then we'll jump into Tableau Server. So let me pull up Tableau Desktop. Great. So to start, we're going to talk about what Tableau offers from a mobile strategy, and I'm going to do that in Tableau Desktop. So in Tableau Desktop here, we have, just to orient you guys to the screen, this is a dashboard that I've created based on some Fitbit information of mine now from a year or two back, but it's going to be helpful to kind of demonstrate how we have mobile capability and how it's easy to create mobile views. So if I assume for a moment that my organization, if this is a dashboard for my organization, and my organization says that we're allowed to have mobile applications either on the iPad or iPhone or other tablets or other smartphones for that matter, I want to be able to create my workbooks in a way that is mobile friendly. Now, in a relatively recent release of Tableau, Tableau's offered a device preview mode. Now, going back to really the beginning of Tableau when it was first offered on Tableau Server, I think around Tableau version 7, the mobile strategy for Tableau was author once, view anywhere, which is very valuable because some applications you'd have to create multiple versions of a dashboard for a mobile view or not. In this case, you can still author once and view anywhere. So I could publish this and load it up on an iPad. However, if I want to take a somewhat custom view now within this same workbook, I can open up Device Preview and create a tablet version. And so what this will allow me to do is still within one workbook, create multiple versions of a dashboard or of a view that can be viewed on different devices, which is very powerful because it doesn't duplicate the amount of content that you have. So when you're considering your mobile strategy and if Tableau is in that environment, it's important to consider, A, which tools or technologies will be available, which devices, I should say, and then how are we going to do that? Are we going to allow people to create a device preview view like this, and I'll show you how you might go about that in a moment, or are we just quite simply going to let Tableau kind of take over and size it for us, which in some cases might work well, some cases might not work well. So if in this case I want to let users create an iPad view as part of my mobile strategy, all I need to do is I do add tablet layout, then I see that shows up here, and then I can start really resizing or taking things out for this tablet view. And then I'll show you that nothing actually changes when I go back to the default. So if I go in here, if I say, okay, I don't want this scatter plot on the tablet, if I don't want, maybe I'll take out some of these guys. I'm going to remove this. Actually, I'll just remove all of these. Do that one more time. So now I see that I just have this one viz, and then I'm going to do fit all. And now this is on my tablet view. So, of course, my default view is a bit bigger going back there, and we can see that actually nothing changed on my default view, which is what we would expect. If I come back to tablet, now this is going to be my tablet view. Now saving and publishing this will mean that whenever I go on via Safari on my tablet, it's going to show it me in the view that you see here. If I go back onto my default view or in the desktop, or if I view this, if I don't view this via tablet by switching the URL around if I want on Tableau Server, this is how I'm going to see it. So pretty straightforward in terms of creating mobile views. Again, this is a tool that I think Tableau makes it quite easy to create mobile-friendly views if that's part of your strategy, if you've decided that that's part of your priorities. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about monitoring, adoption, and performance. And in this case, I'm going to stay in Tableau Desktop for a bit before I jump to Tableau Server and focus a bit on the performance. So Tableau performance on different dashboards is something that we deal with a lot. And so people will often come to me and say, you know, my dashboards aren't performing. And my first question will be, is it live or is it extract? And then if it's live or if it's extract, I'll say, have you looked at the Tableau Performance Recorder? And this is a feature that I think is very powerful and often not very widely used. So to show you guys this, I'm going to open up a fresh version of Tableau 10.5. And I'm just going to close the other one. I don't need to save that. So here's Tableau 10.5. It'll look like a couple of the recent releases. Tableau 10.5 came out now, I would say a couple of weeks to a month ago. And so the Tableau Performance Recorder will allow you to actually, behind the scenes, record the actions that you're taking and how they're interacting with your data source, whether it be a live connection or a extract. And this is all contained, self-contained within Tableau. Everything that the Tableau engine, the VizQL engine is interacting with the underlying data source. The way that you turn that on is you go to Help, you go to Settings and Performance, and you do Start Performance Recording. Nothing will happen at this point except for the fact that if I went back here, you can see that it says stop. I'm not going to do that because I want to open a dashboard. I'm going to open up my Fitbit dashboard, and as I open that, what's going to be happening behind the scenes is that Tableau is now recording all of the queries that were sent back to, in this case, my extract, to get this information to show on the screen. Obviously, this dashboard opened up very quickly, so the performance won't tell us that things took very long, obviously, but it will record all of the queries. And then now, if I start to interact, so if I say, if I highlight this bit, if I want to, let's see, if I want to take these guys, if I want to keep only on here, I want to use this as a filter. All of these interactions will be recorded in the performance recorder. So all this interacting that I'm doing, if this was on the server, you can do this as well. I'm doing it through desktop. So I've done a couple interactions here. Now I'm going to come in and go back and say stop performance recording. And when I do that, it's going to open up a different workbook that is going to be an out-of-the-box workbook with data behind it that's telling me how long it took for all of the different interactions, and to open the workbook, how long that took place. So really, in 2 clicks, turning it on, turning it off, I was able to get that information. And so this is the information that, that this workbook has captured for me. You can see that at the top, and this again is standard, it'll give you all of the events that it took, and because this is in Tableau Server, it will record queries, it will record other things like uncompressing data sources if you're working with extracts, it'll record computing layouts, sorting data, all of those kind of ancillary queries that you might not see on a live data source, because that's really the queries that are sent directly to the data source. So this is really valuable. This would be really valuable if there's particular dashboards that are taking a while, to see why they're taking a while. If I want to get at the underlying query that's happening, I can see that if you click on one of these that's executing query, it'll actually give you the query that's here. So if I want to get in more detail around this query, what's actually happening with it and why it might be taking longer than others, this is very powerful. And so, like I said, whenever someone comes to me and says, my dashboard isn't performing, I'll say, well, have you looked at the performance recorder? Where are things performing poorly and why? And once you start to see the queries that are put out there, of course, we can't necessarily control those queries in full without tweaking the dashboards or visualization, but we can get a sense of what's not performing. So if we kind of extrapolate this idea and push it out towards perhaps a slow-performing dashboard on a SQL or Teradata database, this will begin to illuminate where you might want to put indexes, how you might optimize this data source specifically for this dashboard. All of this will be critical in tuning the performance of a specific dashboard, and I would say more generally around your performance strategy as to how you make sure your dashboards are the best performing when your users are using them. All right, so that was a bit on Tableau Desktop. Now I'm going to jump over to Tableau Server, talk a bit more about monitoring and adoption, and then we'll talk about disseminating standards and best practice. So I'm going to go over to Tableau Server. In this case, I'm actually on Tableau Online. And so as I mentioned, Tableau Online is very similar to Tableau Server. It's really the same underlying technology, but Tableau Online is Tableau's cloud-hosted software as a service version. So it works well for us. It's kind of a per-seat basis, so we can you can scale up, scale down very easily. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Tableau Server or Tableau Online, I'll give you a brief overview. So this is my default, how I come in. I'm looking at all of our workbooks. These are all the different workbooks that have been published for various reasons to this project, and this is our default project. So Tableau in general is separated into kind of several different kind of stratifications or hierarchies of content management, and it's actually recently changed, which will add a layer of sophistication to how you might organize your content. At the top, we have sites, and for people who have access to multiple sites, those will be listed here. And so this is really the independent demarcation of content. You can divide sites by a number of different reasons. It might be based on department, might be based on region. We've seen some people divide sites based on application. It's really dependent on how you want to organize your content. Typically, we will see that people will at least divide sites based on their software development lifecycle. So they might have a Thorogood prod or Thorogood beta like you have here, if this is where people want to release beta content or QA content before it goes into production. And then within that, there are projects. And so this here is our default project. You can have projects, again, based on different departments. If you want to do projects based on ad hoc versus or self-service versus IT or data managed, different things like that. It's really flexible. The default project you see here comes with every Tableau site, and it can't be deleted. It's just kind of that standard template site. Often people actually probably don't use it. Now, a recent introduction to Tableau Online and Tableau Server is the notion of new projects within projects. So previously, we had Tableau sites and then projects within that, and you couldn't really go below that. Now we have projects within projects. You can see that I've listed here default sub-project. So now you can get very sophisticated with where you organize and manage content. Workbooks, views, data sources, all of these items can exist in the parent project. They can exist in this sub-project here. If I click into it, you can see I have one workbook. And then I can also even go in and add a new project here. And so if I wanted to call this default sub-project, I could do that. I could add a description in. I'm not going to now, and then I can create that project. So now, where Tableau was previously perhaps a bit limited with only kind of 2 levels of hierarchical content organization, you can get quite sophisticated. And then permissions, kind of going one step beyond that, permissions can really be managed at each project level or kind of locked to the parent project too. So you can get incredibly sophisticated here. If I say I want to edit contact permissions, I can unlock this so that at each level of the hierarchy, things are managed by an individual user who owns that content, who's approved all of those things. So quite powerful, I think, to begin with in terms of managing content, and now even more powerful with the ability of adding effectively subfolders. And what we're now dealing with is a very robust content management system. And so following up from the topic of monitoring adoption and performance, Tableau Server offers some additional functionality beyond what we saw in Tableau Desktop to help monitor performance and usage. And this is really where you get that enterprise scalability, because as you saw in Tableau Desktop, that was really the performance for me as an individual on the data source. But if you want to see how tons of people are hitting your dashboards or hitting the underlying data sources, you got to come to Tableau Server for that. And so if I go to the status page, and this will be available for site admins or server admins. So if you don't see it, that probably means you're not a site or server admin. If I come here, I see that there are a number of workbooks that are available for me that can help me monitor and track performance. So if I come to the Actions by All Users dashboards, for example, we see that there are different types of interactions on this site over, it'll be over to start the past 7 days. Let's wait for a sec for that to come up. And so this dashboard, once it comes up, will show me the interactions on the site over the past 7 days. I can update this to be the past 7 months, which will bring in more data. And then I'll see that there's actually a significant spike in information coming back in August. So this is taking a bit longer than I would have expected. So I might leave that for a sec, and then I'll come back to it, and I'll circle back on this. So bear with me for a moment. Here we go, just when I was about to leave. So if I go back to months here, and I'll go past 7 months, and this will refresh. We saw that in the past 7 days that there was a couple of different interactions, but if I go back now 7 months, I'll see that there'll be quite a bit more interaction. Oops. What happened here? Let's see. Why don't I just do the past 1 year? It is possible that Tableau has been removing some of our content, which on Tableau Online, that is bound to happen. But in any event, we can see that we're tracking the usage that we have here, what actions, excuse me, my users are taking. For me, you can see that I don't have much activity over the past couple days here, but you can imagine that if you have access to this, that you can track all of your users' activity. And you can see that there are a number of different workbooks that you have here across the top. And all of these workbooks reflect, if I go back here, reflect all of these workbooks here. So this is really the out-of-the-box admin and server monitoring that Tableau offers. If you're using Tableau Server, all of this information will be stored on a Postgres SQL database on-prem if you're using it, or if you're using, for example, infrastructure as a service in the cloud, it'll be stored on that database on that server as well. And so if you want to create custom views, which we've done for customers as well, that is also possible. So next, I want to talk a bit more about disseminating standards and best practice. And so there are many ways in which companies will look to share standards and best practice. In this case, I'm going to do a bit of a unique spin on it in terms of how we share data. And so I'm going to go back here a couple times and go back to our default project. I'm going to go under data sources, and I'm going to see that I have a number of data sources that are published. Now, something that Tableau has recently offered is the ability to certify data sources. So what we're looking at here is a list of data sources that are published to Tableau's data server. That's something that's been available for some time, and in my opinion is a very unique and powerful capability that Tableau Server offers, because it allows companies to abstract users from their underlying data sources. So you can see here that I have a variety of different data sources that connect to a variety of different environments. Some of them are extracts, TDEs, you see here, and then 2 of them are live. And anything that's live, two of them are servers that we've now extracted. If you're working with Tableau Server on-prem, you can connect to a variety of different things, whether it be analysis services, Hadoop, Teradata, all of that can be put centralized here as a Tableau data source on Tableau's data server. And what that will allow you to do, as I mentioned, is to make these data sources independent of a user having to know what they're connecting to. All they need to do is know the name of it here, come in, find it, and they're good to go. Furthermore, you can certify these data sources. So you can see that this was certified by my colleague, Allison. And what that means is that that's approved. So if you bake that into your governance strategy, you can tell users that you should only be using data sources that are approved. And if they want to use this data source, they can use it in a variety of ways. They can connect to it via Tableau Desktop. They can also connect to it via Tableau web editing. So now I'm in the browser, but I'm in what is effectively an online version of Tableau Desktop via Tableau web editing, in which now I can create Tableau workbooks and save them to Tableau Server, really without having a Tableau Desktop license. So if you extrapolate this a bit, imagine what you might be able to accomplish with an abstracted data connection that is approved, vetted by either your IT department or Tableau data stored, and then you can have users connect to it via web editing and create a number of different insights, either at an ad hoc basis or create dashboards that people might look to use. Now, I will note that the dashboards you can create here are won't be as robust as what you can create in Tableau Desktop. There are some limitations. However, Tableau's roadmap is that they are bringing those 2 things together. So eventually, they do expect to have full parity, meaning that Tableau web editing, like you see here, is going to be the same as what you can do on Tableau Desktop. So considering how Tableau web editing with approved data sources like this reseller SQL database that we have here integrates into your governance strategy is critical. And it will also help you understand who needs Tableau Desktop licenses, and so that'll help you understand where you need to be spending money on those licenses and who can get away with web editing here. All right, so that was our demo that we have here. And then I think there was a couple other slides that I wanted to cover off. So I'm going to now go back to the slides here. Of course, if there are any questions, if there are other features you guys wanted to see, I know Tableau recently released commentary, which some people might be interested in, how that plays into governance. Please reach out. I can always go into those in a bit more detail. So now I want to talk a bit more about our approach to establishing BI governance before we wrap up. So developing a governance strategy for your organization is going to be a journey. And so we've worked with a number of customers to develop governance strategies to meet unique needs within an organization. And while each strategy is specific to an organization, the process which we use to develop it can be applied across the business. And so the first step is to create a list of governance items that are important to your organization. If you think back to the fundamental tenets that I shared, we could look at a variety of areas to be part of this governance strategy. This list is going to be just a baseline of what we would expect to be inclusive of many topics we identified. And that would include self-service versus IT managed, mobile strategy, monitoring, security. If you're using Tableau, you might want to consider some of the features that we talked about in our demo of how those might enhance your governance strategy. Once you've collected your list of topics, you need to bring together the people to discuss the key objectives of the governance strategy and what it is that they want to accomplish. It's important to include relevant sponsors both from IT and from the business to ensure that the technical possibilities align with your business goals. With the main objectives in mind, we will then work with our clients to prioritize the list based on what's important to the sponsors, what's capable in the tools, and what's relevant to the organization. Prioritizing this list will help ensure the most critical items are addressed first and that we don't have to forego the holistic nature of the strategy. And then after we prioritize, you want to pick some potential use cases, and that could be across a variety of different departments. The key is to pick some things that are rooted in practical application so that you aren't making decisions and pushing out strategies before you've tested them in real-life situations. Once you have that prioritized list and you've tested it against some real-life scenarios, you have your set of initial standards. That's your kind of 1.0 set. And then we'll do a bit more testing with that group, and then you'll start to get your iteration here. So once you've gotten through that the different use cases, the initial standards, you test them, you begin to get that feedback loop. That's very critical. This is kind of the linchpin of this whole governance, establishing the governance strategy. And so what's critical here is that you keep that feedback loop open, that people are honest. It comes back to the initial people who are putting the strategy in place, and then it also feeds back to the people who are on the ground, who are providing the feedback in the first place so that they understand how their use cases are different and unique. And so finally, once that's all, you might release your 1.0 version. And then once it's released, again, you need to keep that feedback loop open. Once there is that initial 1.0 version, the strategy can be released more widely, and then the organization can roll out, and that'll include coaching and training. And then it's critical here to consider the right people that are involved in the governance strategy. As I mentioned, is it the administrators? It could also be the data stores, the people who are creating the dashboards, as well as the people who are consuming the dashboards, so that everything is properly adopted. And so we find that it's most important and helpful to set up some sort of forum that allows users to provide feedback on the governance standards so that the strategy can continue to be iterated upon. And this will create a feedback loop that will allow end users to integrate into the overall strategy. And then if we look at the approach in a bit more detail, you can see that it aligns to the 4 governance pillars on the right-hand side. As I mentioned, the standards definition to start is going to play a very large part, but then as you get started, once that feedback loop comes into place, you're going to put a lot more focus on the other 3 areas. The standards definition will still be relevant because you'll need to go back through that feedback loop, but once your 1.0 version's in place, assuming that there aren't massive changes to technology or tools that you have, things are going to be more in line with the other 3 areas of ongoing execution, admin support, and exploratory and future. And then as things change, those will be fluid and update as your strategies change within your organization, tools change, et cetera. And then lastly, I wanted to note is that in this case, we talked about Tableau. So you'll notice that number 3 here, that prioritize the list and what tools and technologies are used, comes pretty early in the process. In this case, it's important that you understand what technologies are at your disposal and the capability of those technologies. So you don't want to be just purchasing technologies because you think that they might work. You want to do the proper vetting, and you also want to understand how that fits within your governance strategy early enough on so that you can influence how the tool is implemented and also so that the tool can feedback how your strategy is going to work. And so that just about concludes our content for today. I know that we're a bit over, so I hope you guys enjoyed the webcast today. I hope you guys found it valuable. Of course, if you have any questions around the governance strategy, the features that we covered today, Tableau in general, don't hesitate to reach out. And that concludes our webcast for today. So thank you guys.